Welcome to Strategic Management Audio Summary for Enterprise Management of SEMA. I'm Tharindu Ameresekere. Another step in making you pass. So what is strategy? Strategy means the direction of the company. How a company will be different from another, how it will compete in the market, what is the plan to achieve the profits while beating the competitors. That is to put strategy in a very simple way, while the more theoretical definition will go as a course of action with a set of objectives to be achieved. Now, there are certain questions that we should address in strategy, like what business will we get into, what markets will we operate in, and why will we be different, and all these are questions we need to answer. And environmental situation, technological development, and even overcoming competitor strengths, all these are integrated as content of a strategy of an organization. Now, we can break down the strategy of an organization into different levels. First of all, we have the corporate strategy, which is the strategy at the topmost level. CEOs, BODs, and all these big boys and girls are basically there. Now, corporate strategy is where you decide what business will we be in, what products are we mainly going to be focusing on, and also it will look at which markets to operate. And it will also decide why the company will be different and special. For example, in the case of Starbucks, the coffee company, being an ethical coffee company is a direction set right at the top. So that's corporate strategy. Now, from one unit, you can't handle your overall worldwide operations. Especially if you take Coca-Cola, where market to market, country to country, region to region, city to city, where the taste, the trend, the likes and dislikes, the cultures will vary to a large extent over a very big spectrum. We need to divide our business into different sections. So if you take Coca-Cola, they will have Coke US, Coke Europe, Coke Asia, etc. Now these come under SBU, strategic business units. Each of them will have their own products, each of them will have their own focus markets, and they will decide what is the ideal marketing mix in terms of the pricing, the placing, and the features of the products. Now, don't get this confused with corporate strategy. Now, corporate strategy also, I said, they decide on the products. Well, that's more overall. Coke, decision not to get into denims and shoes, but rather to focus on beverages is set at the top. But under that, Africa and Middle East region of Coke deciding to come up with more fruit juices and tea flavors, and the US region deciding to come up with more Diet Coke. Now, those are more SBU or strategic business unit level decisions. Each SBU will further have its own functions, for example, finance, HR, etc. Now, these will develop a separate strategy to support the SBU strategy. So, for example, if you take Coke Europe, in the case of Coke Europe, what happens is their strategy based on the overall corporate strategy of Coke, the Coke Europe strategy may be to focus more on the second tier cities which have not been tapped that much, and under that the HRM would have to look at coming up with plans to recruit more people from a regional and from a more smaller city level rather than the main city level. So you can see the different strategies of different levels have to be interconnected. That's when a good strategy gets created. Now, when you look at how we develop a strategy, we call that the rational strategic process, or we call the rational strategic planning process, and that is where you take a top-down, step-by-step approach. For example, you start off by setting the vision and mission, identify where your current company situation, which we call position audit. Then we move on to what is recognized as strategic option generation. Then comes strategy evaluation and choice, implementation and review. Now, what is vision and mission? Vision and mission is what the company wants to achieve in the future and how it will get there. So, a vision for the company may be to be a leader in socially responsible coffee business, while the mission could read out to say to add value to the farmers and customers by upholding an ethical coffee industry. Now, that comes under vision and mission. So vision is more short, it's about where they want to end up. Mission is more about where they want to be, how they will get there. The next step of this rational strategy planning process is what we call position audit. Position audit is we try to understand where are we now. So there are a few things to do here. First of all, internally, how are we doing? Are we doing good? Are we doing bad? What are our good things inside? For example, if you have a good supply chain, if you have a good employee motivation, those are good things. What are the bad things you have? Are you having a lack of financial controls? Are you having poor production systems? These things come under what we call value chain. Analysis will help us to understand these things, and these things are internal factors. So we understand the situation of our internal factors using the value chain. Then we need to look at outside. What are things happening outside that may be good or bad to us? So for this we study the external environment using PEST and 5 forces. Now, as you know, PEST is political factors like government policy, political stability. Economical is, the overall economic situation. Are we in a recession? Are we in a boom? Then how is the currency rate doing? How is the interest rate doing? Social is, we are looking at demographics. We are looking at factors like is the population growing? Are they young? And what are their tastes? Are they moving away from traditional thinking to more modern thinking? And also technology, internet, mobile phone, Facebook, rest of social media, everything we look at with regard to the external environment. So for example, if a youth brand that was thinking about using social media to connect with the youth, if they find that people are moving away from Facebook and the rest of social media, that is something bad for them, and that is outside the company. On the other hand, if they also find that politically the government earlier resisted Western type products, but now they are opening up and allowing them, that comes as a positive thing. Another tool to look at the external environment is by using the concept of 5 forces. Michael Porter's 5 forces tells us to look at industry related elements such as, can the customers bargain over the company? Can the suppliers bargain? Is there a high rivalry in the industry? And also what about the situation within the industry? Now, all this while, remember, Michael Porter's 5 forces is about the industry, not about anything else. So like I said, again, we look at bargaining power of the customers. Can they bargain with the company? We look at the bargaining power of the suppliers. Can the suppliers say, what, if you don't pay me a high price, I am going to somebody else? And what about the situation of rivalry? Are they fighting hard, or is there enough for everybody? What about the threat of new entrants? Is it a case where somebody else can easily enter your market due to lack of entry barriers? And finally, we also look at the threat of substitutes. For example, in a country where water is more popular, is very, very popular, and maybe natural drinks like coconut water is even popular, Coca-Cola will find a very high threat from substitutes. So these are what we call the Michael Porter's 5 forces. Analyze them. And according to Porter, if those forces are very high, it's bad for the company. If those forces are very low, it's great for the company. Now, all this while we are looking at what is good for the company and what is bad for the company, both inside and outside. So, combining all this, we come up with what we call the SWOT analysis. Strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. Strength is anything good for the company which is inside. Weakness is anything bad for the company which is inside. Opportunity is anything good for the company which is outside, and threat is anything bad for the company which is outside. So combining all this, we get to know where are we now, what is our situation, where are we now. Now we know where we want to go to, our vision and mission. Also, along with vision and mission, we would have decided on our profit targets, profit objectives, and we know where we are thanks to our SWOT. Now the next step is coming up with that plan from where we are to get to where we want to go. Now in this case, we come across a strategic option generation. We have to look at what will give us a competitive advantage. That means will we become a cost leader where we try to provide at the lowest cost, or will we try to be a differentiator, like for example Ferrari, or for example it can even be Singapore Airlines, Cathay Pacific Airlines, where they try to give a very different, unique product, maybe at a high price but with great quality. So we have to pick between these. So what will give you an advantage? Number 1. Number 2, the direction. Now direction means how are we going to get there in terms of products and markets. Will you offer new products to the same market? We call that product development. Will you offer your existing products to a new market, like Apple going and launching the iPhone in China? We call that market development. Will you offer the same product to the existing market? Look at Coke. They are selling more and more Coke to existing markets. So we call that market penetration. Or will you diversify? That means will you get into a separate business which is different to what you are handling now? Best examples are Google getting into robotics and Coca-Cola getting into healthy beverages. So all these come under the directions. We call it market development, product development, market penetration and diversification. This is said by Ansoff. Then also comes the situation of looking at the methods. Now fine, you decide to do a market development, you decide to go to a new market. So what will you do? Will you start your own business? We call it internal development. Will you enter into a strategic agreement, which we call a partnership, or it can be a strategic alliance like KFC and the franchises all around the world? And then also, will we be looking at another possible option of where we buy over another company? Like for example, when Vodafone wanted to enter India, they bought over Hutch. So these are different methods. So you have to pick between what will be our advantage, which direction, and which methods to grow in. The ideal choice you pick should be one where your stakeholders are happy and which will give good returns to your company as well. Now, when it comes to implementation of the strategy, the one must look at how do we put these plans into action. Well, it can be at a managerial level, it can be at a more operational level. At a middle managerial level, we see that these strategies being put into action through training programs, policy programs where managers are explained about the company policies, while at a more operational level you see in a hotel like Four Seasons, every single day the managers will talk to the employees, tell them what they are here for, remind them about the ethos or the main mottos of customer service, and through that make them deliver that strategy. So that is strategy implementation. Of course, there are other methods to strategy without this top-down, because top-down is good because you have a top management team in charge, stakeholders will love it, and at the same time they will also have a situation of where the resources can be aligned from a more overall helicopter view. But the bad side is lower level guys don't get involved, and they are the ones who know about the market. They might get demotivated, and also top management might make decisions without a proper understanding about what's happening at the lower level. So that is why it's bad. Now, that's why there are sometimes other methods which are recommended. For example, the emergent approach. Don't go with this big strategy goal at the beginning, but rather change it as it comes. For example, if you take Honda, entered the US market wanting to be a big bike player, later realized this big thing is not working because Harley Davidson and all was doing way better, and then gave up the big part of it, but went ahead with bikes, but small fuel efficient bikes, due to a demand that came from the market itself. So go with one plan, see what demand is coming from the environment, change accordingly. Emergent strategy, we call it emergent strategy. And at the same time, in the case of emergent strategy, well, the manager must be able to detect what is working and what is not working, and at the same time manage this change, because you can't always be changing. You have to go with some plan. Another option what is available for us is what we call logical incrementalism. Step by step, bit by bit, keep on adding something new and different. Basically it's similar to this freewheeling opportunism, where logical incrementalism is where you start strategy small, get the support from the company, take the next step and take the next step, etc. The bad side is that suddenly if there's a new competitor coming in, you don't have a main strategy using which you can attack that competitor. As for freewheeling opportunism, it's a strategy of not having a strategy. Once again, it gives flexibility. You're not committing very big investments at the beginning, but once again, you can't unify your company under one common plan, and that is really bad. Also, a decision which we have to make when we are developing our strategy is, are we to go outside in or inside out? Outside in is, like we said earlier, for the top-down approach. You look at the outside environment, what do they don't have, what do they need, and try to offer that. But of course, anybody else can do the same thing. But on the other hand, inside out is the company decides, look, this is what we are good at, this is our strength, we will hit using that. Now that is what we call inside out approach. Company looks at its internal capabilities, using that it will offer something to the market which they can't resist. For example, nobody wanted a touch phone until Apple offered it, but Apple offered it, and here people are saying, oh, we want that. Nobody wanted a device which was bigger than a phone but smaller than a laptop until Apple offered it. After they offered the iPad, everybody wants an iPad. So that is this inside-out approach. To do that, of course, according to Professor K, you need a good reputation. Apple has that. You need strategic assets. Well, Apple has that too. They have excellent people skills and they have excellent technology. You also require innovation. Apple is in the forefront of innovation, and a good competitive architecture where the company is close with the employees as well as the suppliers. Even during the recession, Apple kept on buying more components from the suppliers to maintain that connection, and that is a competitive architecture. These resources should also be rare, valuable, imperfectly imitable, and also they should be something which cannot be copied by the competitors that easily or substituted. Now, for example, Encarta had a very big asset in the form of their volume or books. Suddenly, Britannica had that, Britannia Encyclopedia, but all of a sudden, Microsoft came up with Encarta, offered the entire encyclopedia in a CD, and all of a sudden they seem to have lost the plot. So these are certain problems which you have to be careful of. You may have a good asset, but if it's not having those features of rare, imperfectly imitable, non-substitutable and valuable, then it might not exactly be a good option for building a inside-out approach, or what we call resource-based theory or a resource-based approach. A good resource is something which is rare, which will add value to the customers, and something which is always wanted by the people, and it's also something which the company would have mastered over a few years. For example, Honda's ability to come up with small fuel-efficient engines is a perfect example. Also, as a part of strategic management, remember we have to do stakeholder management. Now, stakeholders are those who have an interest in the company. It can be your BOD, your shareholders, media, government, employees, customers, suppliers, etc. But no matter what, divide them into 4 categories. High power, high interest, that is the top guys. Get them involved and look after them. You might have high power, low interest like the government. Keep them happy. It can be in the form of not breaking the law, looking after the, helping the government in certain activities and programs, and many others. So that is what we call, high power, low interest. You might also have high power, low power, high interest. For example, media, it can be employees. Now, the thing about them is that low power, high interest employees, they don't have much power as an individual, but at the same time, they have high interest what is happening in this company. But the thing is, if they are not looked after, just because they are low power, if many of them join and combine with a union, then they become high power, high interest. So you have to be very careful to manage all of these stakeholders properly. And finally, low power, low interest, these are the people like minority shareholders who might not be that much concerned about what's happening. So look into this, see which category stakeholders belong to. Usually in an exam, if you are given a question, try to figure out at least 1 or 2 stakeholders for each category, but sometimes you might find about 3, 4, 5 stakeholders of the case study belonging to the one coordinate or quadrant such as high power, high interest. But it depends on the question and case study. Sometimes these stakeholders have clashes, shareholders wanting more profits while government trying to put more taxes. Sayat and March gave us different approaches to handle it. Can be through focusing on the more powerful one, sequential attention, side payments, and getting a top authority like a chairman to intervene and solve the matter. For example, if finance director and marketing director are having a clash over an investment on an IT system, you can expect the chairman to intervene and take up the required action. Now, these things come under stakeholder management. And finally, I like to bring you to diamond theory. Now, diamond theory comes in the wake of this internationalization and globalization. Now, as you know, in a global business world, we have to be global. But at the same time, we can't be too global. We have to maintain our own identity as well as a brand, as a product. Now, Coca-Cola, they've spread over all the possible countries in the world, but wherever Coke goes, Coke is Coke. But their advertising, their marketing, they adjust it very nicely to match that particular culture. Now, according to the diamond theory, this explains to us why some companies in certain countries do better than companies from the same industry in other countries. For example, Sri Lankan tea companies do very well for tea. Then on the other hand, we have Indian IT companies doing very well, German automobiles doing very well, etc. Now, the diamond theory says that 4 conditions are needed in a country if things are to work. Number 1, they should have a very high demand, which creates the experience of fulfilling a large customer base. It should have what we recognized as supporting and related industries. Swiss watch industry supported by the Swiss engineering tool industry is an example. It should also have high rivalry and a strong strategy for the industry. For example, in Switzerland, they have a strong rivalry because all the top watch companies are there, but at the same time, they have a strategy. None of them will want to discount and sell the watches. They all go with a strategy for the overall Swiss watch industry. And also, most importantly, it should have the required factor conditions like labor, raw material, maybe natural factors like soil. In Sri Lanka's tea industry, that's the case, while we also have a very good labor and research capabilities. Things like research capabilities, education facilities come under advanced factors. Now, of course, this doesn't explain sometimes how companies in countries like Singapore, where there are hardly resources, end up doing very well, and nor does it explain how sometimes, from the same country you might have 2 companies, one does very well and the other doesn't do very well. And how does a company like Coca-Cola, a multinational, do very well all around the world is not addressed. But at the same time, these resources can quickly get over. Due to problems like war, they can get disrupted, and if people migrate, then the resources will be lost. So these are some problems we see in the diamond theory. So overall, that is a summary of the entire strategic management chapter. I touched upon all the key important areas. Go through them, be prepared, and I'll meet you soon with the next summary, which will be on project management. Please do note that I did not go in for a very detailed discussion here on competitor analysis, given the fact that we have been through it in very detail, and it's something which I want you to prepare more on a more detailed level and not just through a small summary. Especially look at aspects of how competitors can affect us and why we should do a competitor analysis, which is simply so that we can get to know the competitors better, we can identify what their strategies are and prepare for them, and also see how they see the market, and maybe based on that adjust our plans and actions. So I want you to go through competitor analysis in a high detail, because this time there's a very high chance you can get tested on it and it becomes a tricky area usually at the exams. Alright, so once again, all the best. I hope you will enjoy this audio summary, and I'll meet you soon with the next project management audio summary. Good luck, keep studying, keep moving forward. This is your time. All the best. Thank you.